What's going on, everybody? What's going on? I am so sorry. I am some minutes late. Oh my goodness. I had to tend to Meek last minute. He started fussing, and I was like, right at 7:30. What's going on, y'all? How are y'all doing? Hello, Teresa. How are you? Forgive me. Again for being late. Today, hopefully, is a much needed and powerful conversation. I am just completely ecstatic about this conversation because we tend to talk about leadership all the time. And I think it's an important discussion. But at the same time, I think the details of how everything transpired needs to be, excuse me, y'all, needs to be discussed more so. So let's talk about the brain and the function of the brain and how that works. Okay. So, what we don't really realize is that the mind in itself works by a fill in the gap type of structure. That's how it functions. So, when you're trying to fill in a gap or when you're thinking and you can't connect A to B, what comes about is a question. So typically when you have a question, it's because your mind is saying, "Oh, I have A information and I have B information. How do I make it make sense? So how do I connect A to B?" So it then arises a question. And the idea behind the mind is that I'm hoping the answer to my question will fill in the gap, right? So that's how a mind is structured. It's not actually normal and typical for a person to to ask a question that they already know the answer or they don't um, want the real answer to, because the point of a question is to fill in a gap unless they're trying to determine if you know the answer to see if you're capable or something like that. But that still is a hole that someone's trying to fill. There is always a purpose intended behind the question, and that's typically to gain insight and information, and so your mind could connect one thing to another to make it all make sense. So when we discuss leadership, what's going on, Lovely? How you doing today? When we discuss leadership, what we have to realize is that there are the regular qualities of leadership, like leading by example, being disciplined, being motivated, having good communication skills, that are all typically baseline. But what turns it into a skill, what makes leadership a skill, is when you know the difference between needing to be a leader versus allowing something to unfold, because leaders and teachers have something very much in common. And what we don't realize is if we get too much in our ego, if we get too much in the attention we get from it, then we will take away the structure and learning process for the people that we lead or the people that we teach. Case in point, we have a tendency to overshare and overtalk. Have you ever heard somebody like volunteer their opinion and you're thinking to yourself, like, I didn't ask? The reason why there's offense there is because subconsciously the mind knows I'm asking a question because I want to know this specific answer, because I'm trying to fill in the gap. I'm trying to make sense. But then the other person will add something else, and it may create us to take an assessment like, do you doubt me? Do you not trust me? Do you think I don't have it under control? And so a leader also is proficient at cues. So for example, if you see someone in the kitchen cooking, and what's going on, Terry? If you see someone in the kitchen cooking and they're doing their thing, right? And they're cooking or whatever, they're not struggling. They're not looking for something. They're not, lost. They don't seem helpless and, like they need a helping hand. They're just doing their thing. If I go in there and go, you should do X, Y, Z, I might give them the impression that I don't trust what's going on, or I don't think they got it. You see what I'm saying? Versus me receiving that energy that they're, doing their thing in the kitchen, and then waiting for them to feel stumped, and then allowing their mind to work to say, you know what, I don't know how to do this. Use their critical thinking skills to try and solve that issue. Realize they cannot solve that issue. So they use their critical thinking skills to say, you know what, I'm going to ask XYZ for assistance, to show me, to tell me, to give me direction, right? So as a leader, you have to not only lead, you as a teacher, you don't just teach. You structure it to where they can learn for themselves, they can think for themselves, they can gain experience. Because what we don't realize is that that's all part of how you gain confidence. That's all part of how you learn what you're capable of. That's all part of building resilience and building experience. So sometimes a leader is so much of a leader, or a teacher is so much of a teacher, that they won't give you the figure it out space. They won't hold space for your mind to work, because that actually nurtures free thinking, that nurtures independence, that nurtures confidence, that nurtures the ability to feel capable in your own right. That's why most of the world looks to other people like, is it okay if I do this? Can I do that? Because they have not sustained, or they haven't solidified knowledge of their own capability. They haven't solidified experience to be confident in their own decision-making abilities, which would suggest that they have been around people who have been constantly thinking for them. Whereas a person that can look at something and go, that puzzles me. And then they'll sit there and continue to look at it and go, well, how do you do that? Well, I wonder if I move that around. That is a person that is using their cognitive function to figure things out. And they're saying this works, that doesn't work. I don't know what to do here. I know what to do here, so on and so forth. And so, in a situation where we're dealing with a leader, you want to notice these cues from a person. The same thing is true with children. Like when a child comes to show you something, in that moment is the time to give praise. If your child is staring at something for a very long time, they're thinking typically. Allow them to think. It's when they look to you that it's almost a request for input, a request for advice. So if they're looking at something, they're pointing at something, and then they're looking at you, they need something from you. If they're staring at something, they're figuring something out. Turning their head to the side, they're figuring something out. So in those moments, you want to allow them to figure it out, because if you allow them to have the experience with the thing, like they might have a toy and they're trying to figure out how to get it open, you don't want to walk over there and open it. Oh, they're having trouble opening it. Because what you created in that moment is dependency on your mind, on your ability, on your confidence, on your cognitive function. That's how you create children, that when you raise them so long like that, and then eventually you're like, strike out on your own, be independent. They're afraid, because while you've been coddling them, while you've been stepping in so much, now they don't want to do anything without you. So you haven't actually nurtured independency in them, nurtured confidence, nurtured resilience, nurtured capability, and their confidence in that capability. So you've given them information and then created an environment where they second guess themselves and they need to run everything by you. So that's how you get a child that, even though they know what they're supposed to do, they keep coming to check with you. And you have to reiterate, when they get into teenagehood, that same parent will become frustrated. Like, you don't have to check with me. You know how to do that. And now you find yourself going, you know what to do. You know what you're doing. But the reason why you're having to undo everything that you deposited earlier in life is because you wouldn't allow them to explore on their own. So the same is true when you're dealing with adults. You don't actually want a person that refuses to think for themselves and they're trying to channel your brain to come to a conclusion. It means they don't want to do the work, which means they're not strengthening their mental muscles, which means that they will always be dependent on somebody else's mind to draw a conclusion, make a decision, or have some type of confidence or self-esteem. And if you play that role, you're enabling them in that particular area. So what we don't realize as leaders and what we don't realize as teachers is we need to know that there's a moment when you intervene and there's a moment when you step back and give grace and allow things to unfold, because there's a part of experience that you cannot teach. The child has to fall down. You might decide that you want to protect them and you don't want them to get hurt. But truth be told, if you're dealing with a child that needs to feel that, and you're protecting them from it, they will always be a risk taker until they understand the risk. And as a teacher, there's a fine line between leading someone and teaching someone versus enabling them. If you get too capable or too consistent with doing that, you're actually creating a situation where they are too reliant on your capability and they're not developing their own capability. And you can do that to adults. Okay, just like you can do it to a child. You can create complacency in another adult. So when you're a good leader, you know the difference between a person that does not want to rely on their own brain versus a person that does. A person that wants to think, a person that wants to be resourceful, a person that is confident in their own thoughts. They are aware to say, well, I'm asking you this question because I'm trying to move a couple things around, and this is a key piece of information that I need. So if you ask a question and this person is like, yeah, and like, for example, I need to know how to write a business plan. Oh, okay, cool. Well, instead of writing a business plan, what you need to do is X, Y, Z, yada, yada, this and that and the other. You're still sitting there like, I just need to know how to write a business plan. I didn't need to know the rest of this stuff. And it's not about the experience. It's about leaders and teachers have to respect the experience and autonomy of others to say that they know when they need the information that they need. And then someone will say, well, what if you're just trying to help? You can enable somebody and intend to help. Your intention is kind of irrelevant. You may intentionally be trying to be helpful, and yet you're creating an environment where you are keeping someone stagnant. Like I said, for example, we do this with our children all the time. I don't want them to get hurt. I don't want them to have this experience. So I shield them from life. And what you do is you enable them. Not only do you enable them, but you cripple them. So when they experience it without you, all hell breaks loose because they don't know what to make of it. They don't know how to feel about it. There's so many aspects that they were unaware of because the experience wasn't allowed to be had. And so as a leader, it's important to understand that when you see somebody in their confidence, allow them to be confident, allow their mind to work and assess that there is an issue. Allow them to calculate that issue and try and resolve that issue. Allow them to try and resolve that issue and maybe realize that there's a component that they don't necessarily have. Allow them to come to you and say, this is what I'm trying to do, and this is what I want to try to resolve this. And give them what they're asking you for and allow them to go try and apply it so they can see that it does work. And if it does work, they build confidence. They build confidence in the fact that their ideas are good. They build confidence in the fact that asking for help didn't go negatively. They build confidence in the fact that I had an idea, I thought about it, I resolved it, I asked for help, I got this piece, and then they can depend on themselves, and they know they're able to calculate that they are resourceful, as opposed to them seeing a problem, trying to resolve it, coming up with a theory on how to resolve it. Then they say, well, I'm unable to do that. Let me go ask this person how to resolve it. Or do they have this piece, right? Do you have this piece? Because in their mind, I've come to a conclusion and now I need to test my theory. Do you have this piece? And they go, yeah, I have this piece, but if you use it this way and you do this and you do that, I'm just trying to help. And you may be. But now the idea that they had loses the air out of its balloon. There's less confidence in the theory. They're in the building confidence phase. So naturally, if they came to you to ask you, do you have this piece? You are a person that may have knowledge, that may be resourceful, somebody that they would come to for advice. So now they're trying to weigh your advice versus their thought instead of maintaining confidence in their idea and pursuing the theory. So now all these other things take place. Well, I don't want you to feel like I'm not listening to you. Well, I don't want to feel like, I'm not confident in my idea. All these different things, all these different emotional problems that could have been resolved if you would have just listened to the question. Do you have this piece? Sure, here you go. And the truth is, some teachers, some leaders, sometimes we want to be so glorified. Sometimes we want to be so admired. Sometimes we want to feel like we have the answers to all the questions and we want to resolve everything about everything, that we forget the importance of allowing other people to figure things out for themselves, because that's how we got to where we got. Is yes, there were people that had information, but we were also allowed to inquire and ask questions that we needed to be answered so our brains can function properly. And sometimes when a person is clear and concise and they say, do you have a screw? All they want to know is, do you have a screw? That's not code for advice. That's not code for help. That's not code for lost. They may have already moved stuff around on the chessboard and say, you know what? The way I can fix this is with the screw, but I don't have a screw. Let me see if such and such has a screw. As the leader at that point, your job is to give them the screw and release them back into the universe. Now they can run back to their project and go, now let me see if this will hold, right? So they find out the screw holds what they're trying to complete perfectly. Now they have just solidified that they are capable, that their thoughts are clear and something that they can trust without the input of any outside sources. I made that happen does wonders for confidence. My thought is true, clear, and concise, and it served me well. Doing that 1,000,000 times will make you confident in what you think. And we don't realize how important that is for a child to have, how important that is for an adult to have, and how terrible that is if you strip it away from a person or make them doubt themselves. So let's say the screw didn't fit. Because there is no shame, there is no guilt associated with it, their brain continues to function. Oh, dang. Now, some people may give up in that space and say, you know what, I can't do this. Let me go ask for help. This still builds character because now I know if I get stuck, I can try. My ideas are good. I can be supported by other people without feeling like I don't have a good idea. I can choose when I need help. And then be confident in needing help and say, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I tried. It didn't work. I'm out of ideas. Can you help me? The reason why people typically don't ask for help is because of the shame and guilt associated with it, because people tend to be very egotistical in helping. And We don't realize that when we give our opinion, when we help, when we try to, whatever our attention is at the time, that might be exactly the component that they needed to resolve whatever mental issue that they had. And not mental issue as in mental problem, but mental issue as in there's something they're trying to solve in their mind, a problem like a math problem. We tend to do too much for other people so they don't have to do it for themselves. Then when we get people that are not accountable, that lack experience and are immature, we want to treat them like something's wrong with them, as if they didn't spend their entire life being thought through by their parents, thought through by their spouses. When we have a conversation with a spouse and they have a difference of opinion and we want to wrestle them to agree, you're not nurturing free thinking and cognitive function. You're saying surrender your mind. When you are allowing somebody's brain to be nurtured and mentally stimulated, you're going to allow their mind to work. So you may have a difference of opinion. Explain your opinion. Okay, I see what you're talking about. That is affirmation to say, okay, I understand. Doesn't mean that I agree. It means I see what you're saying. I don't have to agree to understand. That's also something that we get confused. And a leader has to know the difference between these situations. He or she needs to know that some people don't need you to do it for them to teach them. Most people, in my opinion, don't need that kind of teaching because it causes them to be too dependent. What's going on, Vanessa? How you doing? What's going on, Natalie? And thank you so much for the share. This causes dependency in the human mind. The reason why we're always saying people move like sheep is because of this problem. If you notice, like when I had my son, every time I post him and we're doing something with him, it's people online going, you know what you should have did. You know what you should have did. You know, what I usually use is, and in my mind, I'm thinking, these are people that would have taken my choice from me. These are people that would have taken my thoughts from me. These are people that are trying to help me, but they're not allowing me to find my place as a mother authentically. You see what I'm saying? Even if this was not the right decision for my son, do I not have a right to have the experience to test out a theory that I have for my child to see how it goes and then adjust my theory? See, we don't make people critical thinkers. We don't make them intellectual, and we don't make them smart by giving them information that their mind didn't work for. We cause them to be dependent. And that's how we communicate with one another. You know, when you get pregnant, people are like, girl, don't take these vitamins, take these vitamins. This is what you do. This is what you don't need to do. I can't believe you're eating that. And we don't realize how intrusive that is on a person that is trying to figure life out, especially if you have a person that's like, I want to do things different than other people are doing things. Those people come off like you're trying to impose your will. When you can, as much as we use the term autonomy, we don't really know what that means. What that means is when a person makes a decision, you have it's no reason to infiltrate, no reason to try and change their mind, no reason to say that's not what I would do, no reason. All of those things are efforts to sway their judgment, whether you want to take responsibility for it or not. It is a form of manipulation. If this person says, I want to start a business, and you're like, yeah, but that's what you always say. Just in that moment, you have created doubt and you have taken some of their their conviction about what they decided to do away, whether they would admit it or not. They might go ahead full steam ahead to get it done, but you have depleted something by sharing that opinion. Even though it was something negative, you could say something positive. You know what? That is a great idea. Just make sure you do this. Just make sure you do this. Just make sure you do this. And don't forget about this, because if you do that, that's going to go all, that can go all wrong and yada, yada, yada. And you can also do this, but yada, yada, yada. You can also do the same thing. And many times you do, because the thought is, dang, you didn't even ask me what my plan was. What if I already had all that laid out? You assumed I didn't think of none of that? Is that what you think of me? That I didn't draw any of those conclusions before I told you what I was going to do? But we are so accustomed to giving people information, we do not consider their capability in it all. That's why that's why we're so comfortable. It's just an opinion. Your opinion can do a lot. Your opinion can encourage. Your opinion can cause doubt. Your opinion can build confidence, and it could take it away. There's no reason to have an opinion unnecessarily. There's no reason to advise unnecessarily. There's no reason to give help unnecessarily. Allow the person to dictate when they need these things. And if you see that they need help and they have not asked you, you say, if you need anything, I'm here. Just let me know. Put the ball in their court and say, I'm here for you if you need me. That doesn't mean observe that they need help. Go over there and help them when they could be in the middle of figuring it out. They're allowed to go through their mental process as well. And leadership should reflect understanding that, because a leader actually wants to be able to do that as well. That's why you hear stuff like, I already know. When people say, I already know, they're telling you the information you giving me was unnecessary. I knew that. Tell me something I don't know. You see what I'm saying? Like people don't like to be condescended to and talk to like they're less mentally capable than what they are. But we don't realize something as simple as volunteering help when you weren't asked can do the same thing. Telling them what they need to do before asking them what is their plan to do can do the same thing. So when we're talking about leadership, there needs to be a there needs to be some type of difference. Sorry, not distinguish, but some type of difference between true leadership versus domination or competition. Leadership is a posture, a way, a state of being. It is not. Oh, excuse me. It's not a competition. I apologize. And so it's very necessary that we stay humble, even within our ability to teach, even within our ideas of leadership. Because even leaders can learn. And see, when we, especially, this is one big one for me too. When we talk about, hello, Gloria, thank you so much for the information, putting that up, Terry, I appreciate it. Gosh, I lost my train of thought. Hopefully it'll come back to me. But there's so many things associated with leadership that we don't give enough credit to, just like meeting people where they are. We have, if we don't want to get too egotistical when it comes to teaching, when it comes to leadership, because it takes away from the intention behind the people who follow, the people under your leadership. And being a follower is also, it does not mean blind. It doesn't mean blind leadership. It means these are people to teach, these are people to cultivate, these are people that look to you for some type of guidance. Even though they are under your leadership, it does not mean they're not capable of teaching the leader a thing or two. So it requires humility. A good parent is observant because they understand they can learn from their child just as quick as they can teach them something. Just because we view children as being inexperienced and immature does not mean their outlook on life is not relevant at times. Sometimes brute honesty is needed and necessary. And these are things that we have to adjust to and be mindful of. Oh, that's what I was going to say was a big pet peeve of mine is disguising help, right? So let's say the person says, I'm trying to put this together and all I need is a screw, right? And so they go to someone else that they think might have the screw, and they say, "Do you have a screw?" And the person says, "You don't need that kind of screw. This is the kind of screw that you need," right? And so the initiator of the conversation says, "I appreciate that, but this is actually the screw that I need." And so the response is, "Oh, okay, I understand. You should do what you think is best," right? In my opinion, that's where the conversation's done. They've acknowledged the fact that you tried to give them an alternative. They've told you that they are not interested, and they've explained why this is the best option. And you've said, "You know what? I got you. Thank you for that. Do your thing." It's when the conversation continues and now you're being reiterated to. "Yeah, and I understand all that, but I'm just saying this screw will work better because this is my philosophy. This is my perspective. I've had situations where yada, yada, yada." Now, what happens in that situation is at this point, you're actually trying to convince this person to use your method. Two things cannot exist at the same time. And this is a ego-based thing too. When you give advice, you want advice to be taken. That's all an ego. That's not how this works. When you give advice, that person is allowed to use their mind to see if the advice has merit in what they're trying to accomplish. Advice does not mean you're obligated to utilize it. It means I'm offering perspective for you to weigh. I'm offering a suggestion for you to check out. You're handing this information to another person. They still get to tell themselves whether it's relevant or not. And they have a right to say, "This doesn't apply for what I'm trying to do." People tend to say, "Why are you doing that? I wouldn't do that if it was me." We're not discussing you in this scenario. We're discussing me in this scenario, and I don't mind. Another effort to try and convince someone to do something different than what they're deciding to do. When you respect another person, their mind, their autonomy, when they make their thoughts clear, you back off. Even if you think they're wrong, even if you think it's misguided, even if you think you have a better idea, you allow them to execute their idea. This person is allowed to utilize their idea to see if it has merit, to find out if it doesn't have merit, to find out and experience feelings about being wrong and pushing through the feeling of not being right, to do it again, building confidence in that. All of that is a learning process. Sometimes we want to offer information and offer opinions and help and advice so bad that we're not thinking about the growth of it all for the person we're talking to. If they're rejecting of your advice, if they have a difference of opinion, if they don't share your perspective, all things they have a right to do. Just because you spent time and energy explaining, helping, advising, just giving little 2 cents or whatever you want to call it, opinion, does not mean they don't have a choice in the matter. Teachers and leaders and people of authority understand that fact. So there is no ego in whether or not you listen to what I have to say, because you are also an accomplishing adult. You are allowed to take what I'm giving you and decide whether or not you need it. You're also allowed to go out there, not take my advice and be wrong and realize you needed the advice without an I told you so. Some people need to learn about being wrong, experience being wrong. Then they have to combat their ego and outgrow the ego, the ego, the ego-filled emotions related to being wrong, so they can understand being wrong doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It means try it again. And when we have teachers and leaders that don't care any about that process, they just want to deposit and deposit and deposit and make you feel like you don't have a choice as to whether you take the advice or whether you listen, or how you're causing a negative effect on them by not utilizing what they gave you and making them feel some type of way because you didn't utilize their advice. You're making the person under your leadership responsible for your emotions, when if you rewind, they likely didn't even ask. So now they have to consider emotions, your advice, how I'm going to make you feel if I don't take the advice. Nobody actually wants to go through that. Everybody wants to feel like they can think for themselves. They're a responsible adult. They can weigh their decisions. Every adult wants to feel like they're not a child, even when they have childlike behavior. Nobody wants to be called a child, even when they have childlike behavior. And so the responsibility of a leader, the responsibility of a teacher, is to understand these key factors that you may see a personality type that they clearly want to do things themselves to develop. So that means your way of coexisting with them is allowing them to scrape their knee, allowing them to go out there and develop. And when they run into a problem, if they feel like they need help, they will find you. Another important factor in this, when someone initiates asking a question, assuming that they are, at least somewhat healthy. When a person typically asks a question, it sets the mind up to receive information. So when we formulate a question, the brain is ready to receive data, right? So what we don't account for as well is when we volunteer information, when we volunteer advice, when we move in those ways without being asked, we cannot account for whether or not their mind is ready to hear what you have to say. This person may have trauma associated with lack of support. This person may have trauma associated with lack of trust. And you could trigger them just by giving them too much information, because it would make them feel like you don't think they can do it. And they don't necessarily have to have trauma. Let me clarify this. They don't necessarily have to have trauma. It could have just been a source of a demonstration of upbringing as well. That I'm taught, like, for example, myself, my parents always believed in me, always believed in me. I've never been second guessed by my parents. And I think a big reason as to why that works for me and why I'm so confident is because if I brought an idea to my parents, they let me work it through. They always made me think by asking me questions, not by telling me much. Like the only time I really got a bunch of statements really was when I was being corrected, let's say, or disciplined or something along those lines, if it was necessary. But I'm saying, like, if I say, you know, I'm trying to start a business, my mom or my dad would say something like, okay, what kind of business? To make, let's say I didn't have a plan and I just said it to make them proud, to make them, get an atta girl real quick. And I was capping. Them asking me what kind of business will actually make me go back into my mind and go, huh, what kind of business would I want to start? Right? If I have put this into play, I can respond. I actually want to do go get my cosmetology license. And I think I want to work from home because I'm thinking that, one day I'm gonna be a mom and I would hate to have my own shop and have to transition all of that because truthfully, I want to be home to be a full-time mom. And so my dad or my mom would be something like, okay, all right. So is there a certificate or a process, that you have to go through before you can start working as a cosmetology? Oh, yeah. I'm getting ready to go to this place. This is what their tuition is. This is how long the program is. This is how soon I could be working. Oh, okay. Well, that's a lot of money for the tuition, so they have, do they have financial aid or, so what's going, tell me about the tuition. Well, the tuition is only about this much, but I'm going to go fill out an application and see if I qualify, but that'll still only give me 50%. So I figured I'm going to go work here and here, and I'll just do that part-time to cover the rest. Boom. So at the end of that, I get praise. Okay, sound like you got it all down. Okay, Lacey, that's what I'm talking about. All right, well, if you need anything, let me know. And from childhood all the way to now, that's how my conversations have been with my parents. And so I've always been a thinker, but they've always nurtured my thinking and always framed the questions to be inquisitive and not accusatory. And to allow me to maintain my confidence while I'm trying to execute whatever it is I have so much energy about. Right? So open-ended questions does a lot for the person under your leadership as well as the leader. When you ask open-ended questions, you get to see what their operating system looks like. For lack of better words, you get to get into their head. Right? And so when you get into their head and you realize they've thought about this, they've thought about that, even if you're a person that has a let's say your mind processes a little quicker, and you might find a hole in their logic. The response is not to say, well, you didn't think about this. Well, if you don't take what you need to do, you see what I'm saying? Those are code for you haven't thought of everything you did. You know what I mean? You don't know what you're doing. Instead of allowing them to go through their process. If this person, or not even to say if this person, well, we are also, it's customary for us to do is to tell people and praise them intellectually, but then treat them like they're less intellectually capable than what you've told them. So to tell a person that you think that they're smart, but to treat them like they're not smart is frustrating. To tell a person that you think that they're capable, but when it's time for them to demonstrate their capability, you're trying to protect them from themselves, says that what you're saying is not honest. And that's a thing too, that a leader knows that as well. If I tell you that you're capable, I'm going to allow you to be capable. If I tell you that you're smart, I'm going to allow you to be smart. Case in point for myself, like if I hear somebody and I think that they're a very smart person and they say, this is my idea, this is what I think, I'm listening. A person is going to have to say, Lacey, what do you think? before I have something to say, because a person is sharing their thoughts with me. This is There's no point in a rebuttal. There's no point in giving my perspective. I do not need to show you how equally smart I am. You're talking to me about something. I don't have there's no investment in that to try and convince you I'm smarter than you. And that's something that we do as well. When somebody's giving you an idea and telling you that they have an idea about something, listen. There's nothing you need to offer at this time. Just understand that this is what they've come up with so far, and this is where they're trying to go. You allow them to utilize and put into practice everything they're discussing, and allow them to discern that they need you for something. Don't impose into the conversation and assume you're needed for something. There's no reason to do that unless you have something to prove that you're smart, that they need your help, that they're not capable, that you need to be depended on, that they need to depend on you, that they should have less get up and go about themselves that they have than they have. There's no reason to intervene into what's being said. And when somebody shares their idea with you, give them praise. That's dope. Even if it's something simple, that's dope. It doesn't matter if you would do it. Doesn't matter if you think the idea will crash and burn in 30 days. Don't take their momentum from them. A good leader understands that. Unless it's a situation to where it's directly benefiting me, or going to cause me harm. Sorry, not benefiting, but going to cause me harm. And I need to bring it to your attention. This is something that can cause me harm, potentially cause you harm. But even in that case, you don't necessarily need to say, this could cause you harm. Don't do that. They might be aware of the risks. You can say, make sure you be careful. You're dealing with an adult. Be careful. I heard that could be dangerous. Be careful. As much as we want to protect everybody from their own experience, it's only your job to a certain extent. If you're a parent teaching a child, you have to believe in the teachings that you gave your child and eventually allow them to use them without your interference. Otherwise, it says that you're not confident in what you taught them. If they're not free to use it without you, without having to double check with you, did you actually teach them what they needed to know to survive or not? Because it's a contradiction if you raise them and tell them how capable and how proud you were their whole life, but then as soon as they decide to get married, you're questioning their judgment. As soon as they decide to have a baby, you're questioning their judgment. As soon as they decide to live a lifestyle that you wouldn't choose for yourself, you're questioning their judgment. The whole purpose of you being in charge of raising them is to make sure they have good judgment, not to second guess everything that they do. You're supposed to be the reason why they're so confident in their decisions in the first place. So good leaders and good teachers ensure that you're confident in your own mind. Not that you're confident in your teacher's mind, not that you're confident in your leader's mind, but confident in your own mind. The same is true even within marriage. You may label, let's say, a husband the head of household, and the wife is the follower, if you will, or the person under the man's leadership. We don't want a mentally incapacitated woman. You want a woman that's still sharp and able to think. Because the purpose is not just to be a helpmate. The purpose is to keep her sharp and capable. So if anything happens to the head of household, she can continue the legacy in his honor. Keeping her mentally incapacitated does not ensure that can be done. The children definitely can't do it. So a good leader wants a person that is mentally capable, not just somebody that's in agreement, that's, a yes person, but someone that can spot the flaw as well, because they are a capable thinking being as well. Leadership is not about keeping you dependent. Leadership is about putting you in a position to not require leadership. That's one thing that I like to say about being a divine seer, aka a life coach. When I have my clients, I say I'm very proud of the clients that I have, because I haven't retained a client for longer than 6 months. And a person may say, that's crazy. Like, why are you proud of not maintaining a client beyond 6 months? The reason is because if I'm working with you on years on end, I'm not getting my job done. The idea is not to talk to you about your issues for an endless amount of time. The idea of a life coach or a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist is to give you the tools, teach you how to recognize what you need the tools for, and then teach you how to apply those tools to the point to where you no longer need your teacher. You can fly from the nest. You can apply the logic. My job is to teach you how your brain should be functioning according to what you want to do, not what I want you to do, but to help you think in accordance with what you want to do, and to help you realize that if you're trying to accomplish this, thinking like this doesn't get you there. Thinking like this gets you there. And here's why. And not by telling you, but by showing you. So when you say, I want this outcome, but I don't want to deal with this and this and this, when I show you that there is no way you can have that outcome without dealing with the things that you don't want to deal with, you now have to make a choice. Do I actually want that thing? Or do I want something else? Because if you no longer want that thing because you genuinely do not want to go through these other things, then we need to shift your focus, because you're traveling in a direction towards something and you're not going to do what it takes to maintain it. So you're walking an endless journey. And once you learn that I need to assess where I'm trying to go and decide what it's going to take for me to get there to help me determine if that's even what I want to do, I can help you save time making decisions in your own life. And once you can put that into practice without me having to ask you these open-ended questions to guide you there, you don't need me to do that for you anymore. It is the best feeling to coach someone and then to not have the tools, and then to finally get on the phone with them and I don't have to say a word. They're just walking me through it. Okay, so this is my problem, right? Okay, so this is what was said. This is how I took it, because this means this. I can prove this. So I said this. But then the response was this, which reiterates my point, and yada, yada, yada. So I'm feeling like as a result of the conversation, this should be the outcome. Boom. And then they'll go, what you think, right? That's how I know we're almost there. When we're not baby stepping through the conversation, they're saying this, and this is what I analyzed, and this is what I thought, and this is what I took away. So as a result of this outcome, this is the decision I'm making now. And they say, what do you think? They're basically saying, Lacey, check for understanding. Was this a logically sound thought? And I get to say, you know what you're doing. I'm just here for it. I don't have to say nothing. You know exactly what you're doing. You don't need you called me. You don't need no advice for me. That's what we're doing. And get a little laughing experience from it. And then the next conversation, usually after that, they will call and hit all the bullet points. And what's missing? What do you think? They no longer need to check with me. They feel confident about what they think, how they feel, and what they decide. When we have all three of those things in a row, you got it. because my job and my perspective as a teacher and as a leader is not to keep you incapacitated. I want to give you the tools, show you how to use them, put them into practice so this becomes a routine for you. This is how you see it. This is your perspective now. And once you build consistency in it, and we're not addressing any more issues, we're just dealing with solidifying a new perspective as a habit. You no longer need to be taught. You no longer need to be guided. There's nobody you should be looking up to show you what to do, to tell you, yes, you did it right. Good job. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm proud to say that in a short amount of time for all of my clients, I was able to accomplish that in the area of their life that they felt like needed work, as opposed to being like, I've had clients for 10 years. Like, and we still talking about the same thing. Y'all been talking about the same thing for 10 years. Like, respect, because I understand that there are people that need different things and people go about their teaching in a different way. However, my perspective comes from a place of, I haven't done my job if you're not ready to leave the nest. I want my clients to leave the nest. There's nothing that makes me happier than to know I got a client calling me, talking about their ventures out in the world, what's happening in relationships or not happening in relationships, but they're in alignment and secure with where they are in their life. That makes me proud, as opposed to me having a client, let's say, that's, reeling about, this is the decision that I made, but I'm not happy about my own decision. Like, I want that person to, whatever the decision is that you're making, I need you to be happy about it and you to know why you're doing it and you to be secure in that fact. So, as a leader, you want the subordinates or your followers or the people under your leadership to outgrow you. Not outgrow you as in like no more, but to become a equal conversationalist to where they no longer need you to advise them. They no longer need to be taught by you. If you spend a lifetime doing that, are you actually giving them the pieces that they need to rebuild themselves, or are you keeping them where they are? At least that's my logic. And I could be wrong, but that's how I've always approached life, is that if you're a teacher and if you're an adequate leader, after a certain amount of time, they should be able to go beyond you and accomplish things with the knowledge you gave them, with the structure and whatever it is, boundaries. They should be able to apply the things you gave them and be consistent in it. You should, if you've worked with a teacher, if you've worked with a leader, or you've had a leader, an authority figure, you should be saying, I had a level up. I am a better person. I am changed in some way for the better as a result of knowing you. Because a leader doesn't have to, is not going to wash you clean completely. They're there for a specific agenda and a specific purpose. It may not even be character related. When you get with a leader and once you know how to start a business because of this person's leadership, they were an efficient leader when it came to assisting you and guiding you to start a business. And once you're ready to start that business, you no longer need to be led by that authority figure that taught you how to start a business. You see what I'm saying? So for me, that's how I feel about just leadership overall. If that's a title that you hold, there should be no ego in whether or not a person takes your advice, whether or not you're even grateful for the advice. You are a seed planter. You give people information for them to determine whether it's useful. And they get to determine that. Some people will hang on to the seed for years And then finally the light bulb will go off and be like, you remember that lady? I talked to that lady years ago. I understand what she was saying now. Teachers and leaders don't get to decide when you utilize the knowledge they give. So there has to be no ego in association with leadership or with your ability to teach. That's just not how it works. What's going on, Natasha? Hello. And so for me, I think that that's a big distinction between different types of leaders. And I also think it creates a healthy environment for a numerous amount of reasons. But again, that's just me. Please share your thoughts in the comments and tell me what you think. If you believe that there's some holes. Oh, am I really? How long have y'all not been able to hear me? Mm-mm-mm. Okay, okay. Oh my God, you guys, like, how long have I been mute? Please tell me that y'all heard most of this live. That's gonna hurt my feelings. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm nervous now because I've been on here for a whole hour and I don't know if y'all heard me. Somebody checked in at 8:11 prior to me hearing. That's 30 minutes I could have missed. Okay, not bad. Okay, don't scare me like that. I was about to say I've been talking for 30 minutes since the last comment. Okay, I'll take 29 seconds. Not that bad. Okay, but leave your thoughts in the comments, please, on leadership and tell me what you think. Everybody has a different theory as to what makes a good leader versus not. And I would like to hear you guys' thoughts on, you know, what's relevant versus not. Um, I can hear you been on for the last 15. Okay. Thank you, Cassandra. I appreciate it. I was about to say, no, I can't be going mute and ain't nobody telling me. But I hope you guys hear, my perspective. And next Friday, hopefully, we'll be able to discuss, do women make good leaders? Because that's a big thing too. We talk about leadership, but can a woman actually be a leader? We have a lot of difference of opinions when it comes to that. So we're definitely going to take that one to the what do they? I don't know. Take it to the cleaners is what they say. I'm old. They don't say that no more. I've been learning from your view, and I agree with everything you've said. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And so for my thing is, I guess we can roll this over to next conversation is, again, can a woman be a leader? Not only that, but if a woman can be a leader, how would that look if a woman is a leader and she's with a man who is also a leader? Can that be healthy? Because what we like to say is that if a woman is a leader, then she's masculine, or she's fighting for manhood. Can a woman be a leader and not be fighting for manhood? What does that look like? Can a woman be a leader and still be submissive? Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's really dope. Thank you. And don't get me confused now because, like, listen, I consider myself to be an intellect, but I am rough around the edges in places too. I am not the exemption. While I would say I have my philosophies, while I would say that I have my convictions, I have my areas of growth too. Sometimes I would definitely say I am stubborn. I would say that I'm very headstrong. That might be if I had a toxic trait, I am very headstrong, but I would say it's not as a result of me wanting to get my way or wanting to be right. I genuinely fight for possession over my own mind. I don't like being imposed on. I don't like feeling like I don't have a say in the matter when it comes to my own thoughts and my own emotions. I don't like being having an intrusive experience that way. So I'm like, I'm good with anything as long as I can hold on to my perspective and you can hold on to yours and there's no problem with that. I can hold space for anything. I'm very much I don't have to agree to understand you. And then there's so much conflict with even that phrase because a lot of people believe that if you don't agree, you don't understand. And that's a frustration area for me as well, because that's completely false. A person does not have to share your perspective, a person does not have to agree with your perspective to understand it or comply with it. So that can be a very loaded conversation too, because people have a tendency to think that um if you feel that way, then you don't agree or you don't understand, meaning you're not retaining the information. But two things can be true at the same time. I cannot agree with you and I don't share your perspective, but I get what you're saying. Meaning it makes sense, as in the words line up like they're supposed to and they have a meaning. That doesn't mean that I share in your logic. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of time people think one thing means the other. Yes, ma'am. Your name reminds me of Afeni Shakur. Oh, that's dope. That's really dope. Thank you for that. But I think that a lot of times um, ego runs rampant, especially when we talk about intellect. Intellect is infused with a lot of pride and a lot of ego. And we associate someone not taking our advice or being right as a bruise on our pride and our ego. And the truly intellectual understands that that's not what that means. That's not really what that is, which actually, when you're not in your ego and you're not in your pride, you can give somebody information that'll change their life and you're not emotionally invested in what they do with it or the outcome. And to me, I feel like that's a true intellectual when they can give you a gem and just hope you do well with it. And they understand that they don't have a say in the matter. They relinquish control. And so I think that's a big thing too. Like I said, no ego, no pride, and not trying to control is for me a true intellectual person when they can absorb perspective without trying to change your mind. They can hear what you're saying and process it through without being emotionally invested. Those things speak to a good demonstration to me, at least in a healthy way. But again, I digress. Thank you guys for joining me on all platforms. I am going to try my best to start my schedule, my full schedule for the week on Monday, but I need to work on that and actually advertise what days I'm going to be working. So if I announce it on Sunday, then it's game time. But if not, then I might need some more time to work on it. Thank you so much for the input and the opinions, and just for being here to listen, because I know sometimes you can listen and you don't necessarily need to speak. So I appreciate everyone's presence for the conversation as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Definitely. My pleasure. You guys have a wonderful evening and I will see you guys soon. Don't forget to acknowledge, rebuild, and then evolve. Peace.